Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. We are going to continue with the blouse with the sash detail today. This is part 2 of this project as it was just too much to fit into one video. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, go ahead and do so by clicking in the eye right here, and a link is also down in the description below, and then you come back to this one as it probably won't make that much sense if you haven't watched part 1 as we start in the middle of this project today. We finished part 1 just before putting in the sleeves into the armhole, so that is where we will continue today. So I hope you're gonna like this video. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and follow me on my socials. The link is down in the description below, as well as the pattern for this blouse. So enough of that, let's continue with the project. I have my blouse right here and my sleeves, making sure that I have the right one for the right side. You can see that with the double notch right here marks the back, and the front is just one single notch. I'm just going to pull on the 2 bobbin threads together, and then I'm going to distribute it evenly so that the sleeve just fits into my blouse cutout. There are already some notches that you can put together, such as the front and the back sleeve notch, and then of course also the shoulder notch. So I'm going to do that before I gather, just because it's easier in my opinion to figure out how much I need to gather. And you can see that the gathers here are already enough. I'm just going to distribute them nicely so that they're not all on one spot, but like kind of gain on gathers when reaching the shoulder, like this maybe. And then I'm just gonna put pins in to keep it in place, and just repeat the same on this side, but it also already seems to be enough gathering. So I'm just gonna distribute it as well, maybe like this. And then I can sew the sleeve into place. Right here. So I went ahead and overlocked the armhole seam, as that's the neatest way to finish. I didn't want to put piping here as it's just gonna get too bulky, so I opted for an overlock seam, which is fine here. So that's what I did. And now we can go ahead and iron the seam allowance towards the sleeve here in the sleeve head. That just is gonna make the sleeve just look nicer. When ironing, make sure to not iron the folds flat. So I'm just going to try to steam it using my tailor's hem, which is a round surface. Probably also smart to do it on the other side. And this is just so much easier if the side seam is not closed yet, because you have so much more room to iron. And then down here we can just iron as per usual. So just like this. And that just also makes a really nice and cute puff. Let's repeat that on the other side. Okay, now we can go ahead and prepare the sash for the side seams, because we're gonna sew it together in a bit. And the sash will be attached in the side seam. You're gonna find a notch in front and back piece right there, and we want the sash to be here. So let's make the sash. This is what it's gonna end up looking like. So it's just put right sides together and then folded right sides out. Not that hard actually. It's just a very big pattern piece, so that's the only thing that is maybe a bit bothersome. But basically you're just gonna put right sides together like this, so that there is a point here, and you're gonna sew all the way around up until the smaller edge. You're gonna leave this open. We're gonna turn it right side out over this open edge right here. Before we turn this over, we're gonna cut away the seam allowance at the tip right here, just so that it's easier to turn it right sides out. And then here at the corner, we're also gonna cut it down just right across. It's also gonna turn more easily. And let's do that. And to get the tip out here, I'm just gonna use a pin and like do this here, and then we can go ahead and iron this. So now that the sash is done for both sides, so I have two of them, we can sandwich that in between the front and back pieces into the side seam. So I'm just going to put the side where the ditch of the seam is visible, so I ironed it like this as well, onto the back side, and just put it where the notch is, right into the side seam. And I said in the beginning that I'm going to make French seams wherever I can. I could do French seams here in the sleeve, but since there is the sash, this is already 2 layers of fabric. If I do French seam, it's going to be just very bulky, which is why I just decided not to do French seams and just overlock it. I think that's the better alternative. And now I can put the right side of my front piece on top of this to close the side seam entirely. And I'm just going to overlock this here as well after I'm done sewing this together. So just like that, and then I can sew the whole side seam shut in one go. Okay, so now that the sash is on and the side seam is closed, we can go ahead and iron the seam allowance into the back of the sleeve and the body of the blouse. And we can continue with the cuffs that will be placed onto the hem of the sleeves. And we don't need this as of right now for that, because we have a tiny bit to prepare for that. So we need the cuff and then button loops. The placement for the button loops are put on the pattern, so you just need to copy that out. I already put notches into my side seam right here, just on one side. The other side gets the buttons, so it's not needed. And we're gonna start with the button loops. So there are 2 things that you can do with these. Either you turn them right sides out, so you just fold them in half, sew over top, and then turn them right sides out using a thread, a hook, or any method that you feel comfortable with, or you just fold them twice towards the inside and then on top of itself again, and then top stitch it. To me, I think the turning it inside out method is the easiest. I have a method that I always use, which is just knotting a thread on, or like a yarn on one side, and then sewing it into the middle, and then keeping it on the inside of my loop, and then just pulling on it, and then it turns the whole thing right sides out. So that's what I will be doing. So for the button loops, we're going to cut off sections of 5 centimeters. As I have smaller buttons, I think this should be enough. I did like 6 centimeters the last time, and I felt like it was a tiny bit too long for the buttons. So I'll do 5 this time. So like this. And we can use these to put onto the cuffs. To prepare the cuffs, we're going to fold the cuffs in half and prepare them as per usual, just as we also prepared the button tapes. And we're gonna iron in one side, the seam allowance of one side, and exactly the opposite side I'm gonna iron in on the other cuff. So just like that. And we're gonna close the short sides of the cuffs, but on one side where we have the notches in, we're gonna put the button loops. So I'm gonna place them right here, and I found it's easiest if you just place them above or underneath the notch and just sew over the piece down, and then once you're done you can fold it back and just attach it on the other side. That's just the easiest method for me. And now that this is prepared, we can go ahead and put right sides of the cuffs together like this, and then we have the ironed fold already. And as per usual, we're gonna start sewing just in the fold and sew all the way up here. And the same thing goes to the other side. We're gonna start sewing and end here in the fold. Can't really see it on camera, but we're gonna stop right here. So just 1 centimeter in, doing the same thing on the other side. And let's turn this right sides out. And that's what it looks like. Let's put the seam allowance onto the inside and give this a press. And that's a prepared cuff. So I have my sleeve right now, and I'm gonna take out the pin that holds the slit together, as my cuffs will be put from the slit to the other side, to the slit, facing with the loops facing towards the back side, so also where the slit is facing. To put these together, we have to gather the sleeve as well to the length of the cuff. So let's do the same as we did for the sleeve head, just sewing into the seam allowance and then, pulling on the bobbin thread. And now we're gonna put the cuff onto this piece here. I want no top stitches, so as I did with the collar and the button tape already, I'm gonna place the non-iron side onto the right side, making sure that I have the button loops also on that side that faces the back, so with the piping folded inwards, and that's where I'm going to pin the cuff to. And now I can sew this onto there, fold it over, and have a nice finish on the outside. And the last thing that we're going to do, apart from obviously sewing on the buttons, which I already did right here, I have to do it still on the cuff, I already put pins in, is to hem the blouse. I'm going to just fold over 5mm twice and top stitch it, as that's the neatest way of finishing this, I think. But you have any option out there that you want to take, so do whatever you want. I will be folding it twice and then top stitching, and that's gonna be my finishing. Okay, and the final thing that we're going to add are the shoulder pads. So I have these two, they have a thickness of 1.5 centimeters, which is exactly how much I heightened the shoulders to make room for the shoulder pads. So that's what we're going to do. Of course, you don't want to just put them in like this, as they are made to be sewn into a garment. We don't have any lining here, and I didn't have access to a already lined shoulder pad. You can get pre-lined ones in black, for example. Those are made for blouses like this, where the shoulder pad would just lay inside and visible. So we are just going to line this ourselves, like just the bottom, and this edge right here will line it, and this up here will just lay openly, as we're going to fix it in place with stitches anyways. So let's just get some scrap fabric. Just kidding, I don't have enough scrap fabric. Let's just get some fabric, and this should be just enough. So there's not much that I will be doing. I'm just going to roughly pin it in place, and then also rather roughly sew it on top here with a few big stitches, like some sort of basing stitches, I guess, and this should be enough. Nothing of this will be visible anyways, so I figure this is more than enough. Okay, all of this excess fabric I'm just gonna cut off, as that's just gonna create bulk, which we don't want. Just like that, and then I'm just gonna stitch this roughly in place and repeat this for the other side. So this is what my shoulder pad looks like. This is the underside that will be visible, and I'm going to attach it with obviously the thicker side towards the sleeve. So I'm going to go into the inside of my blouse and then put the seam of my sleeve about 1 centimeter in, so that the seam allowance just like matches up with the end of my shoulder pad. I'm gonna put a pin right here. Also have the center of my shoulder pad match up with the center of my shoulder, which is my shoulder seam. And then just go downwards here while like feeling my way down towards, so I can see that there is like enough space of the shoulder pad. This is how much it should overlap into the sleeve, and put a pin in right here. Might have to adjust at this point to release the shoulder pad a tiny bit. And I'm gonna do the same for the other side and just feel my way down and check if there is enough overlap, and then also just put a pin in here. Now, as you can see, there is a lot of folds. I have to align the shoulder pad so that everything looks neat and tidy. And I also want to make sure that the armhole seam is as straight as I possibly can make it. And this is gonna be like a lot of back and forth, adjusting the placement, seeing if it looks nice, if there are any folds that remain, and then just repinning and so on, up until when everything looks clean. I can then go onto the inside and just baste the shoulder pad in place with a very loose stitch, and this is just gonna hold it in place at 4 points, probably right here, in the middle here, and here at the shoulder point. And this is gonna be the shoulder pad on the inside. Make sure that you don't see any wrinkles on the outside. As you can see, I have lots of wrinkles because my fabric is so thin. So I want to go ahead and actually purchase already pre-lined shoulder pads and put them in here instead of the self-lined ones, because it just doesn't work with my fabric. So if you have the same problem, you have to use pre-lined ones, which you should do anyway. So stitched here on the inside without a lining. The non-lined ones are to be placed on the inside. If you make a jacket, for example, or something with a lining, then you would also sew it into the sleeve seam right here. But nevertheless, I wanted to show you this, and I will be exchanging them anyways. Probably I'm going to sew the non-lined version in my blouse as of right now to shoot this, and then once I have some adequate shoulder pads for this, I'll just exchange them. So that's how you do that. And that's it already for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I am super happy with how the blouse turned out, and I can't wait to show you. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. I post on Sundays, so you can keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, you should go and definitely check out my Instagram profile. I am posting lots of tips and tricks and sewing hacks and stuff like that in my reels. So if you haven't followed me there, you should definitely do that, and thank you so much for your support there. The easiest and most direct way actually to support me and keep videos just like this coming is to support me over on my Etsy store. I will put a link to this pattern specifically, and of course there are loads of other patterns on my store as well, in the description box down below and also in the pinned comment as per usual. So thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!